Welcome to part 2 of painting a psychedelic bear. In the first part, we just made a big mess and then tried to make some sense of it, and we stumbled upon this nice image of a bear. Now I've let this dry for about 2 days. I use this medium, and my medium is just linseed oil and a little bit of liquid. Kind of a lot of bit of liquid, but that's the medium that I've been using, and that ensures that the surface will dry quickly. So this surface is now relatively dry. You can feel a little bit of tackiness in some areas, but it's pretty much dry. I've got my tablet open here with some interesting images of an action figure that I dipped in paint, because I want to have some realistic blobs coming into this. And another thing that bothers me is this eye. I'm just going to remove that eye completely and make a new eye somewhere around here. So let's watch as we jump into it and start painting. I'll begin with this eye. I'm going to make a new eye right there. And this is going to be a little bit more human-like eye. We can let our paintings sit for a couple days and we come back to them and see what's wrong. Oftentimes some of our darkest colors will get a little bit lighter, and some of our lighter colors will get a little bit darker. And I made this whole bunch of eyes on this piece right here. So I'm just going to be looking at one of my previous eyes and kind of copying off that, how to make an eye. And I'm just got black at this point because I know I'm going to pull this out too. Make it a little bit lighter. Just going to start with that top part of the eye, that small little archway going across there. Keep looking at different eyes. Then we can see the iris. Iris is going to come in a little bit like a circle, obviously. I'm using a number 8 brush. I'm just using the corner of it. You can use a round brush if you like. The iris is generally a little bit darker no matter what color you put in there. It's usually a little bit darker on the outside of the iris than the inside of the iris. And I'm just going to plop that pupil in there too, since we know that's in the middle. Now the eye has this part where there's shadow here, and then it's got this lid. So we're just going to come in, and our light source is coming from this direction. We're going to just pop that lid in on top like that. Already you can see this really changes the way we look at this image. And the eyeball comes down into a little pointy thing with that little gap there on the inside of our eye, our tear duct. Now what you're going to want to do is follow that line all the way across, but this line is actually going to be catching the light. This bottom part of the lid is going to be catching the light. So we're going to draw that shadow underneath the eye first. Go. And we're just going to make a little bit of shadow here to indicate that that is a lid going all the way across. Now we never want to use pure white. You can see I still left a little bit of black in my brush. And this is going to look very white on this surface, even though here on my palette, you can see I've mixed it up pretty much. And we're going to bring that white of the eye into the top there. And just go around that corner. And this side of the eye is going to be a little bit brighter because we have that light coming in there, so I add a little bit more white to it. And we just plop that in right there. Now we have to decide what is the color of the flesh around this eye. Now previously this was a bear, a psychedelic bear, and now we're going to use some of that red color, just because that's the color already around it. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of black. And we can get that highlight coming here. Just like that. And do the same for the bottom. Now this is going to be a little bit lighter because the light will be catching on this top part of the bottom lid. So we can do that a little bit lighter. Then I'm going to use a little bit of this color to also give us a little bit of a variation in light and shadow falling on that eye too, making it a little bit lighter there. Good. And of course underneath this eye is where we see the shadow on the outside. It's going to be darker than the inside. And we put a little bit of that shadow there. Eyes do change things very quickly with the placement of them, especially in these more abstract paintings. And we're just going to flow around there, blend out into the existing color. It's a good thing about using a limited palette. You can always mix and match these colors quite quickly if you just have the same colors to mix with. So it's good to have your palette set up just the same way every time. And you can jump right back into a painting with the exact same colors. We get a little eye poking out there. Now I'm going to go to my smaller brush. And because we have the blue here, I want a little bit of that blue in that eye too. So I'm going to just mix up a blue. Just a little bit of phthalo blue. Some titanium white. And I'm going to add just a smidge of yellow in there. And we're going to get a nice light blue, almost turquoise color. The yellow helps it turn a little bit more turquoise. And we're going to plop that in, just like so. I'm going to dry off my brush, because I want to use the paint that's on the canvas. I'm going to blend this edge out between the dark that I previously put down and my new turquoise color. And we can make some indication that the iris is moving around there. And we've got a little bit darker on this side because this is a ball and it's feeling a little bit flat. We want to darken this edge a little bit. So I'm going to use the same little brush and just darken around that edge. Just to indicate that this is an eyeball going around in space. Great. That's good. There we go. Get that bottom lid, the reflection from the top of it, and we're just gonna turn that corner a little bit. Make it a little bit brighter in the center and on the side. I'm going to blend out that shadow a little bit. Just soften the edges a little. There. Now we've got a nice eye. No, this is pretty psychedelic, but we've got this nice eye there now. And this eye we don't need anymore, do we? So I'm just gonna mix up a bit of yellow for that background color. We're always just trying to match these colors. That's one fun thing about painting. The more you do it, the more you can just match these colors quite quickly. That's pretty close. And you can always blend out the edges too. I'm just gonna make a new little piece right there. And get rid of that second eyeball. There we go. Didn't need it. And this is feeling a bit lumpy here. So I'm going to take that out too. Mix that with the background. You can see this is becoming a real form now, right here. And we're going to make it into one. Before it was a little bit unsure of itself. Same with this here. Down here, we're going to take that out a little bit. And just make this bear a little bit lighter. There we go. Now it kind of feels like our bear has a neck, doesn't it? It's coming along nice. Just had to get a little bit of water. We can see this area is a little bit too big too. So let's just get rid of that too. Doesn't need to be so big. These are the funny things you see after just letting your painting sit for a day. There we go. Now he really seems to have a neck. Before his neck was kind of attached to his face. Now we have a real neck and a real head. And he's beginning, I guess it's a he. He's becoming to just slide out of the ether a bit and into reality. I'm gonna clean up some of these other edges. They just seem a little bit messy now when I'm looking at them. So up here too, let's just really clean those up. Have a better indication what our angles were. Now I don't want this guy to have just normal eyes. I'd like him to have one cartoon eye that's kind of warped and sliding off. And I think I could actually position it a little bit lower down here. You can almost see it coming out of the image. So I'm going to get rid of this eyeball completely. There we go. And for this eye, I kind of imagine that cartoon style eye. Before I was looking at some pictures of Huckleberry Hound. We can kind of use one of these eyes, one of these old cartoon eyes, as a starting point. But ours are going to be a bit more warped, because this little bear's view of the world is warped. You can have one eye looking straight at you and one eye looking sideways. Don't worry about correcting yourself. We can always get rid of these lines later. Oil is strangely forgiving in some ways. I'm going to kind of curve this around to indicate that it has some form to it. There we go. Just a happy little Huckleberry Hound eye. That gives our guy a little bit more life. Now a lot of this is red, kind of this dull red color around there, so I'm gonna go for a blue eye, just to have it pop on that background a little bit. So we're gonna mix up a light blue, just a little bit of phthalo blue and titanium white again. There we go. We want it pretty dark. Thinking of our light source coming this way. Now there's going to be a little bit of dark there, and this bottom's going to be a little bit darker, so we'll just make that a little bit broader. Just a little bit wider shadow on the bottom there, since our light is coming from above and to the right. That'll make a bit of shadow on the inside there too. Just like that. Nice. And I'm going to grab a little bit more white and just mix up a lighter blue. You can plop that blue in right next door. I don't see enough of a change there with that. I want to really show that this is turning the corner here. Some of that undercolor really wants to come into that blue. I'm going to do my best to just not mix it in. Being real gentle with laying this paint down so I'm not just mixing with that background rust color. There we go. I guess we got Huckleberry as blue too, isn't he? I can't help but like some of these old cartoons, even though I didn't watch this cartoon. It was from before my time. I still like the motion and the simplicity of some of these original cartoons from back in the day. I imagine Huckleberry Hound was probably in the 60s. It's far before when I was born. Let's just soften that edge up a little bit. Just soften your edge. No need to rush. Just soften up those edges and give yourself this other eye. There we go. Obviously this is going to be a little bit whiter, so we're going to grab almost pure white there, mix that up. We're going to plop that white in there. I want to cover up all the white, then we'll blend the edges. Get the big mass done first. I think this needs to be a little bit more circular. There we go. Made it a little bit wide on the bottom. This still does operate as a circle, or an oval, I should say. So let's follow that simple guideline that our pupils are circles. And come back around. And just soften that edge up. I'm real tempted to just follow through at this point. We can always change things, but there we go. Now our little guy's really coming to life. And we can use our small brush. This is looks like a 0. I guess it's been worn off, but you can see the edges almost just a nub at this point. But I can use that for blending out these edges. So sometimes it's good not to throw away your old brushes. You can just wear them down and use the edge of it to soften these edges out. This is definitely wet. I'm getting some cad yellow on my hand, so got my baby wipes nearby to clean that off. Baby wipes are definitely your friend. I painted for many years without baby wipes, and then I started printmaking, and printmakers are really quite religious about baby wipes because they don't want to get ink on a table and then that ink gets onto somebody else's print, because you got to share a print studio, and in order to be a good neighbor you want to keep your area clean so your neighbor's prints stay clean too. So we've got these two eyes. I think we're missing a mouth. Mouth would really be a game changer. But we can maybe look at some other huckleberries. How did they deal with Huckleberry looking a little sideways? Huckleberry's got kind of a bear-like schnoz. Just contemplating, trying to figure out how the mouth is going to work. Well, instead of waiting around for that to come, let's just go back to our blobby guy. And I'm just going to use this for reference and kind of make a bigger, darker area. And I think we can see We need just a little bit more of a brow area up there. Something to make this become a little bit more three-dimensional. Really got flattened. So let's have some different angles and different shapes coming in. I'm just going to use my blobby guy here as reference. Just mixing up a bit of that dark red color. And that brow is going to come in around there, I think. I'm just kind of lightly, loosely basing this off of what I'm seeing there. These are, after all, just reference photos. So you can just use them as a jumping off point. Mix a little bit of red in there. There we go. And we're going to mix up a little bit lighter color. We're just kind of making ourselves get lighter as we go. Mix up a lighter color. Just adding white. Separate piles of white and pile that up. And we got a little bit nicer. This feels more like a real physical blob popping out on top of that. I want to be a little bit more whimsical with this now. We're going to make up some of that blob. Have a bit of a reflective shadow on this side here. There we go. And maybe you're looking at a different part. To do a little bit of a different part here. I think it's important to really get dark where it gets dark. Let's have more contrast. Which is one thing I think this image definitely needed. And we'll do the same with this here. Just build it up. Get that real bright color. It really lets us know where the light's coming from. Plop that guy in there. It's kind of acting like a nose. But it helps situate a couple things. Now I feel like I need a little bit of a shadow in this inside area as well. We just got a little bit of a crack in the armor there. coming down nicely. And all of a sudden we've got a nose. Connect this to the back. Nice. And just playing with these shapes. There's going to be a couple other areas that kind of need that light white color. I'll mix up a bit more of that. Add a bit of yellow. The red. Cad yellow. But we really want this bright, don't we? We want to make sure this is light. One real common problem is just not enough contrast. So we want to make sure this guy has enough contrast. There we go. Obviously this is going to be quite bright because we got this light up here and this is quite dark here, so let's just change that completely. Maybe just keep that brush stroke and think about this being lighter here. And we're just lightening everything up now. And these other areas here. This is going to be brighter up here too, of course. So let's brighten that up too. There we go. There's going to be some brighter areas here too. Just make a whole new one. You might have different motions. Just look at the motion of your painting and see what works best with that. Problem with some of these lights is they do get darker when they dry, especially when they're on top of darker colors. So we could probably afford to even go a lot brighter. In this area here. Just looking at all the areas that I think the light would be hitting. And plopping some lights in there. This would be hitting the light too. I think we need that bare nose to really indicate the bareness of this. You're gonna really need that to help give us some definition. So maybe I should look up some bear noses. So we can make our little bear nice and fluffy. And keep a bit of that furriness too. These little edges. Funny how much just a little bit of fur on the edges can really indicate a different type of texture. And we'll do the same here, just make them a little bit fuzzier there on the edge. And we can come in and do some internal fuzz too later. Nice. Who were we looking at before? Huckleberry Hound. You can see him here. Let's look up a baby bear nose. Let's see what a baby bear nose looks like. Oh, there's actually quite a nice little, just the actual nose itself on some sort of a, I don't know what that is, a plastic animal nose. I think we can jump right in with our own plastic animal nose. Have it coming off one of these blobs. There we go. I think some of this internal stuff needs to be removed as well. All this bunchiness. Just kind of making an area where things could happen. Starting to feel out the lips here too. How would the lips work on this guy? Generally, the top lip is darker than the bottom lip. So we can imagine this bottom lip being a little bit lighter than the top one. There we go. And suddenly we have some nice little lips there. Wasn't expecting to make those at that point, but it happened without even thinking, which is how these paintings develop sometimes. Just let your brush move and let it do what it wants. It's hard to decide who's controlling who at some points, and that's okay. And then we get a mouth. And I don't even know if this is kind of becoming something else than a bear at this point, I'd say. It's morphing into a different type of creature, even though we still got this nice plastic bear nose. Not sure how we're going to incorporate it into the painting. Seen a lot of this red and We just need a little bit more blue to kind of liven that up too. And the good thing about these paintings, sometimes they can have different faces from different perspectives. So maybe on one side you see a set of lips in one direction, and on the other you see another one, like a profile or something like that. I'm going to bring a little bit more blue into that now. We just need a little bit more blue to offset all that red and pink and rusty color we got in there. So I'm going to grab a bit of blue and start to liven this area up a little bit more. Just starting off. There we go. Now we have a real indication of, what is the neck and what is the head. We can really tell the difference between the two there. And this little woodland creature is starting to take form. And we'll use a little bit of a lighter blue as we go into the lighter areas. Usually we have a little bit lighter blue for the chin. There we go. That's all right. And we can see our little guy is really starting to taking on a new character as we work through this second stage. Seems pretty serious with that mouth, doesn't he? Very like he doesn't want to be photographed, but he just has to sit there because we want to have memories of people. Sometimes it's hard to get people to take photos, but we do like to have those photos later. So maybe a loved one of this guy pushed him to take this photo, go down to the mall and go outside glamour shots and get his photo taken. It's always good to just think of the basics with this sort of stuff. Lightness and dark. Where does stuff go? When you're painting from your head, you can go in any direction you want, but establishing some basic parameters like where your light's coming from is still important. This is nice coming down here. There we go. Coming And I think I see a opportunity for another eye coming in this direction. Everything's kind of swooping here. I kind of want to go like that. So I'm just gonna, oh, it looks like our blue went for a little run down the palette there. That's okay, I want to use some blue. Just put him back in his spot. And we're gonna actually use a bit of paint thinner, which I usually don't use. But we want this to be a little bit more sketchy, so I'm going to thin it down just a little bit. And I kind of want to continue this up here. It seems to work. Just with that kind of motion going the other direction. And we have to think about if this is another eye. Is that the top or is that the top? Sometimes we just don't know in these paintings. Or maybe it's flat and the eye's in the middle there. Big decisions to make here. I kind of feel it coming this way. And we're going to have this side a little bit darker. There we go. And we're going to use a little bit lighter white there. Lighter blue, I should say. Add a little bit of white. And get a little bit more blue for this area here. And a lot of this we're going to have to let it dry and glaze it in the end with a bit of zinc white to really get those lights to stand out. That's how I do it, at least. And now we have a bit of a different movement coming into the painting now, which I think I can play more with, because this is a bit of a jumble. These shapes are also going in a bit of a jumble too. Let's just grab a little bit of pure white and give ourselves a bit of a highlight right there. And just going to blend those edges out a bit. There we go. I'm going to switch to black. And get our iris in there. And now we need a bit of white. I don't want to go too white, but you do want it to be significantly lighter than the rest of the stuff around it. See how that looks. That looks good. Blocking the main areas first. We don't want to dirty up our color. We can always blend our edges after. But we want that color to really stay true to its value. Now that we're getting to the edge, add a little bit more over here too. There we go. And we're going to use my little stumpy brush. We can blend out some of these edges a bit. There we go. bit too much there. We want to bring that white back in. Coming down there. And let's turn this corner a bit. And while we have a little less white on here, let's just make our reflective shadow on this side. All right. And we've got another eye. I think this guy can always use more eyes. This is almost like a nose here, isn't it? Let's get a little bit of the light spot on that blob coming up in the foreground. Feels like a nose. Can make it more nosy. And I'll just round this out a bit. And we got another nose coming out of there now. Nice. Still feel like you could use another eye. There's just not enough eyes to make sense of this painting, and I feel like that eye needs to be right here. I'm just gonna, since I got this white, I'm gonna paint this eye backwards. Start with the white. Because I saw this eye. Saw this eye before I painted it. And we can just come around here and kind of an in-between a real eye and a cartoon eye. Definitely gonna need some black on that. We can pop that pupil in there. Changes stuff, and it almost makes a mouth here immediately, doesn't it? And you'll have a little bit of a darker area around the outside of his eye there. Now this painting is starting to make sense. You know, sometimes you just need another eye. When in doubt, just add another eye. No wrong place to put an eye. We all have them, and they all move around from place to place from time to time. If you're looking at somebody's mouth when they're talking, who knows where their eyes are? Probably on their head. But maybe they're in the coffee. There we go. Our bear is really transformed into something else, hasn't it? Starting out with this bear, still have this ear coming up here. And we need to keep those ears. Maybe this guy needs to be a little bit happier on this side of his personality over here could be a little bit happier, and this side could be a little bit more contemplative. And I do see it coming in there, but it's kind of hard to nestle. There we go. Just a happy little smile there. I have to get rid of that red thing we had there before. We're gonna make just make a happier pair of lips over there. This guy seems a lot happier. There we go. Kind of separate these two. Got two separate entities now. This little happy face up there. He kind of lives on top of this sadder face down there. Let's just make him a little bit happier. You may be tempted to put teeth in, but I would wait for that. You're always thinking a bit ahead with these paintings. You gotta let a layer dry. That's one thing about oils, that you always have to just wait for things to dry and come back the next day. That's why they kind of develop a bit different than acrylic paintings, no matter what. Not that you can't do acrylic paintings in more than one day, but you can change things so quickly with acrylics. Just let it dry and paint over it. But with oils, you gotta kind of work the whole canvas. Yeah, this guy is really starting to take form a little bit more, I think. This eye definitely needs a little bit of help. That's all right. I got too much paint down though right now, so I'm gonna have to let it sit, I think. This almost looks like a little bird living in the bear's hair. Maybe we could bring that bird out a little bit more. Give him a yellow beak. we go. Now it's almost like a separate animal living in there. Little bird head. We want him to have a little crown. We're just going to let that all dry and come over on top of it next time. Maybe that just needs to be part of the background. We could mix up a bit of that color. There we go. Fixed it. I think we need a bit of an an eye coming up here. We need some focus up here. Just as a painting, we're used to seeing eyes there. And since this is a traditional painting, it should have some traditional elements in it. So let's put another eye up there. Let's clean my brush out and added a little bit of blue to it. There we go. Now we got our little eye shape there. We ran into a bit of problem there with a bit of green. That green we put down. Just gonna take a baby wipe and clean that off. There we go. Then we don't need to get that green into our new color. I'm gonna make this a blue eye too. Now it's really kind of starting to feel more like a bear, isn't it? And we just need a little bit of that light blue. To turn that corner. Add it a little bit darker. This just follows the basic rules of mid-tone, dark, and a light. Now this painting really feels easier to look at. Makes a lot more sense now, I think. These eyes up here. Having the eyes so low really just pushed that whole painting down, and we wanted to lighten that top area of the painting up a bit. We'll probably put a couple extra blobs up there later to balance it out. And we're gonna just do our pupil. Give ourselves a little bit more of a highlight there. And we're going to just use our little stumpy brush to bring this white out. And we got another eye. You can see a couple other areas that need a little bit of help there too. This bottom lip should, let's have that coming out a little bit more than it is. At this point, I think I've got some areas I need to just show a little bit more contour in the background. So I'm going to turn on my airbrush here. Just cleaned it up. It should run well. And I want to just give a little bit of shadow and behind some of these blobs. That should get it good for the day. gives us a little bit more shadow on some of these different objects. And I kind of started thinking about this fur down here as well, because he's going to be a hairy guy. So in the last couple minutes, I think we've got about 4 minutes left. Let's just start to block in some of those areas of shadow that we're going to see down here. I want to go all the way up to the end there. And I'm just going to pop in some of these areas, just so we know that this guy he's a hairy little guy. And these layers can be good to go over with subsequent layers. So we're kind of preparing for the next day. Because these paintings, they don't all just happen at once. I have to make a decision there to get rid of that thing. I don't know what that thing was. I'll probably just put that in the background though. Maybe this guy should have some sort of nipples too when he's done. I don't know why I decided it was a guy. We need to fix that background up a bit right here. Just get rid of that. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, it's gone now. I want to have a little bit of variation in this background too. Some areas can be darker, some areas can be lighter. There we go. So as you can see, our little guy is coming along pretty well. Our little bear, becoming something new. There's still some work to do, for sure. And we'll get into that next session. So thanks a lot for watching. Please continue with part 3. This is part 2. And happy painting.